He was a runaway, a liar, and once he was hanged from a tree. We all think we know Pinocchio, the wooden boy, the long nose, the dream to be real. Maybe this tale was never meant for children at all. Let's peel back the smiling paint and meet the real Pinocchio. Once upon a minute. It begins not with a boy, but with a man, a soldier, a realist, a satirist. Carlo Collodi, born in Florence, Italy. He first fought with guns, then with words. He mocked kings, exposed corruption, and eventually was silenced by censors. So Collodi made a choice no one saw coming. He turned to children's stories, but he didn't write dreams. He wrote warnings. In the 1880s, Italy had been unified for less than 20 years. The entire country was still reeling from chaos and poverty. Many children went to factories instead of school, their hands calloused before they learned to read. To children of the 1880s, danger wasn't a monster. It was hunger, street gangs, and factory blades. Pinocchio's world wasn't fantasy. It was their mirror. In such a world, Collodi wanted to tell the children not glittering dreams, but hard-hitting stories. He said, freedom without responsibility leads to ruin, and lies will end up choking you. And with that, he carved a story about a puppet who couldn't stop lying. If hidden tales like this interest you, subscribe and like for the next story. One cold morning, an old woodcarver lifted his axe. The log he was about to split, it screamed, ouch! Geppetto, alone, poor, childless, took the cursed wood anyway. He carved a boy, gave him eyes, a mouth, legs, and before he could finish, the puppet kicked him and ran off. The town gasped. A living puppet. The police were called, and when they arrived, Pinocchio cried fake tears. Geppetto was even accused of using violence. A single lie from a puppet led to an old man being unjustly thrown into jail. A few days later, Pinocchio saw a puppet show advertisement on the street. He stopped in his tracks, then hurried home to sell the only book he owned, just enough to buy a ticket. On stage, puppets danced on strings and the audience roared with laughter. But then the puppets on stage recognized Pinocchio. They waved excitedly, shouting his name. Suddenly, he became the star of the stage. He talked about how hard someone had worked for him. Hearing this, the scary theater master, Fire Eater, suddenly wiped away a tear. He had planned to burn the puppet, but instead he handed Pinocchio 5 gold coins. Take these to your father, he said. And so Pinocchio. He slipped the coins into his pocket and left the theater, his heart brimming with excitement. But what he didn't know was that those 5 gold coins were seeds of temptation that would soon drag him into deeper trouble. A naive child and 5 gold coins, and 2 con artists took notice, a sly fox and a cat. They approached him kindly and said, hey, if you bury these coins in the ground, by morning a money tree will grow. It made no sense at all, but Pinocchio believed them. He still didn't know the world. And that night they returned, masked and merciless. They tied a rope. Pinocchio ran, but his legs were small and the forest was dark. The rope snapped around his neck. He kicked, he gasped, and from one of them he dangled. That was the ending. Collodi meant for him to die. That was how chapter 15 ended. A warning, but children cried, parents protested, letters flooded the paper. So Collodi did something else unexpected. He brought the puppet back. A pale light appeared from somewhere. The blue-haired fairy. She stared at Pinocchio for a long time, without helping, without crying, just watching silently. Why? Because she knew what kind of being Pinocchio was. A child who followed only his desires, a puppet who ignored warnings and repeated lies. But still, she couldn't let him die. The fairy took him in and treated him. She offered him medicine, but Pinocchio whimpered, frightened, and once again lied through his teeth. And at that moment, his nose started to grow. It grew longer each time he lied. He had been given a second chance at life, and yet he hadn't changed. The fairy who saved him said once again, only through effort, study, and sincerity could he become a real boy. But for Pinocchio, the present moment was all that mattered. And just then, something appeared. A place called the Land of Play, a paradise for children. No school, No rules, just laughter, mischief, and the illusion of freedom. He said to the other children, "Let's go to the happiest place in the world." And Pinocchio gladly followed. There he played to his heart's content. He tore up books, stuffed his mouth with candy, wore a silly hat and banged a wooden mallet with glee. He played until his body changed. His ears grew, his hands stiffened. A tail, he had become a donkey. He was sold to a circus, worked until he broke a leg, then sold again. To a slaughterhouse, a butcher raised the knife. As the knife gleamed above his head, there were no lies left to tell, just regret and the cold shadow of the end. But in that moment, a silver wave crashed through the stall. The fairy returned. She saved him. Again. But this time, something had changed. He wasn't just scared. For the first time, he felt ashamed, truly ashamed. Pinocchio heard a whisper. Geppetto had gone to sea searching for him, and now he was lost. So the puppet, once selfish and foolish, grabbed a boat, faced a storm, faced the ocean, faced the consequences. Geppetto was alive. Pinocchio carried him through the waves. He swam like his life depended on it, because this time, it wasn't just about him. But something had changed when he returned home. He stopped lying, no longer stole from others, and devoted himself to caring for his sick father. The fairy quietly watched over him. That night, Pinocchio fell asleep, and when morning came, a heart was beating in his chest. Pinocchio had become a real boy. And so, the story of Pinocchio comes to an end. When Pinocchio first appeared in 1881, no one expected a revolution. His story began quietly as a serialized piece in a children's newspaper called Giornale per I Bambini. At first, readers laughed. A talking log? A nose that betrays every lie? It all seemed like a joke. He was a whimsical, absurd little puppet. But in episode 15, readers faced something unexpected. In a dark forest, Pinocchio was hanged, his body swaying, frozen in the wind. And the story ended there. That was originally the ending Collodi had intended. He wanted children to see, feel, and learn. What happens when you lie and run away like Pinocchio? But reality didn't go as planned. Maybe it was always meant for those who've grown up. Perhaps he wanted to speak to adults, to remind us that the lies we tell ourselves can shape the people we become. Once Upon a Minute. Coming next, 1,000 Stories, One Desperate Voice, Scheherazade, The Arabian Nights. What should we uncover first? Leave a comment and subscribe to find the truth behind the tale.